She stood there again. Same time, same door, same silence. The cold metal handle never moved, no matter how many times she turned it. For years, Clara believed that behind this door waited her purpose, her dream, her peace, her new beginning. But it never opened, not once. People told her to move on. But how do you move on when your heart still believes the key will fit someday? Each morning, she whispered a quiet prayer. Please, let today be the day. Yet nothing changed. Just that sound of metal refusing to turn, like life saying, not this way. But here's the part no one told her. Sometimes the locked door isn't there to stop you. It's there to save you. And what Clara would soon discover on the other side of this silence might just change how you see every closed door in your own life. Stay with me until the very end, because when you understand why her door never opened, you'll finally understand the no's in your life too. It all began 5 years earlier, when Clara and her best friend Mia walked through the narrow streets of the old city. They laughed, carrying coffee cups and dreams. That's when Clara saw it. An old studio with a wooden door painted deep blue, sunlight flickering across its edges. She whispered, "This is it. My future starts here." Inside, she imagined her art hanging on those walls, the sound of brushes, the smell of paint. She could already feel the joy of creating something that mattered. But when she called the number on the for sale sign, the owner said the studio had just been taken. "Sorry, you're too late." Too late. Those words echoed for years, but Clara didn't let go. She kept that key the landlord once gave her, just in case. Every few months she came back. She believed destiny would eventually make space for her. Even Mia stopped coming. "You can't keep waiting for something that's not opening, Clara." But she didn't listen. Some part of her still believed the door was testing her faith. And then, one morning, she noticed something strange. A faint line of rust spreading from the keyhole, as if time itself was trying to tell her something. What she found next made her question if she'd been knocking on the wrong door all along. The next morning, Clara walked back to the door. The air was heavy with that early smell of rain, soft, gray, and quiet. She reached for the key in her pocket, the same one she'd carried for years, the one she swore would open the door someday. But when she looked closely, she noticed something different. The metal was no longer gold. It was covered in rust. She rubbed it with her thumb, trying to clean it. Tiny flakes fell onto her palm, staining her skin orange-brown. She frowned, realizing how long she had held on to this one piece of hope. Too long, maybe. The key felt cold now, lifeless. Yet letting it go felt like giving up on everything she once believed in. That night, she met Mia again for dinner. Mia talked about her new job, her travels, her art projects that were thriving. She smiled, but her chest ached. "I don't understand," she said. "I've been faithful to my dream and it still doesn't work." Mia sighed softly. "Maybe faith isn't about holding on, Clara. Maybe it's about knowing when to release." Clara didn't answer. She just kept turning the rusty key between her fingers. It clicked softly, like an old memory refusing to fade. That sound haunted her all the way home. She placed the key on her nightstand and stared at it in the dim light, wondering if the dream itself was what kept her locked in. She fell asleep thinking about the door. And in her dream, she heard something, a whisper so clear it pulled her awake before dawn. The voice said only 3 words, words that would change everything she thought she knew about timing.
The dream began in silence. Clara was standing in front of the same blue door, moonlight painting her shadow on the ground. She reached for the handle, but her hand froze in the air. The lock shimmered faintly, as if breathing. Then, from behind the door came a voice, calm, steady, unmistakably real. Not this way. She stepped back, startled. The voice wasn't harsh. It carried warmth, like someone trying to protect her from herself. "Who are you?" she asked, her heart racing. No reply, just the echo of her own breathing, and then again, softly, "Not this way." It was the gentlest no she had ever heard. When she woke, the sun was bleeding through her curtains. Her pulse still thundered in her chest. She laughed nervously, convincing herself it was just her mind replaying old fears. But something inside her felt different, lighter, almost free, as if part of her already understood. The next day, she told Mia about the dream. Mia listened quietly, eyes thoughtful. "Sometimes," she said, "the things that close are the things that would have broken you open in the wrong way." Clara nodded, but her mind wandered back to that voice. Could it really have been something more? Later that evening, as Clara walked past the same street again, she noticed something she had never seen before. Just beside the door, half hidden by ivy, a small window with light spilling through the cracks. What she saw through that window made her question whether she had been facing the wrong direction all along. For weeks, Clara avoided that street. The dream still echoed inside her, those 3 words she couldn't forget, "Not this way." She tried to distract herself with work, with people, with noise. But every time she walked by a closed door, something in her heart twisted. She started wondering if maybe the silence of that blue door had already said everything she needed to hear. One evening, she sat in her small apartment, surrounded by unfinished canvases. The paint had dried mid-stroke, like her life had paused halfway through a sentence. She looked around and saw the reflection of her own exhaustion, the same tired eyes, the same empty promises she kept making to herself. That's when the tears came, quiet, uninvited, honest. She called Mia again. "I think I'm done," Clara whispered through the phone. "I'm tired of being tested." Mia didn't interrupt. She just listened. "Clara," she finally said, "sometimes giving up isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You can't force something that's not alive anymore." The words sank in, heavy but strangely soft. The next morning, Clara walked outside with no plans. She didn't carry the key this time. Her hands felt empty but free. As she passed the familiar street, she stopped at the corner and stared at the old building one last time. The blue door looked dull now, faded by time, no longer magical, just wood and paint. She took a deep breath, turned away, and started walking. But just as she did, she heard a sound, a faint creak, like hinges shifting for the first time in years. When she turned around, what she saw didn't look like the door opening. It looked like the past finally letting her go. Clara froze. The sound was faint but real, a creak that sliced through the still morning air. She turned slowly, her breath shallow, afraid of what she might see. The blue door trembled, the handle shaking as if something on the other side had finally stirred. Her heart raced. Was this the sign she'd been waiting for all these years? She walked closer, each step heavier than the last. The door groaned again, then fell still. Her reflection stared back at her in the dusty glass pane, eyes filled with hope and fear. "If this is you, God, please show me what it means." Her hand hovered near the handle, trembling. With one slow push, the door cracked open. The smell of dust and old wood rushed out like a memory long forgotten. Inside, the studio was empty. The air felt thick, untouched by life. Broken brushes, torn canvases, a few old chairs, everything frozen in time. It wasn't the dream she remembered. It was a ghost of it. She walked in quietly, running her fingers along the wall where she once imagined her art hanging. For years, she had worshipped this space in her mind, believing her peace lived behind it. But standing there now, she felt something different. Not magic, not purpose, but release. She whispered to herself, "It's not that I was too late. It's that this was never mine." As she stepped back into the sunlight, she noticed something strange. Across the narrow alley, a small glimmer of light reflecting off another building's window.
Clara followed the glimmer without thinking. The alley was narrow, lined with ivy and cracked stone, yet the light grew warmer with every step. It spilled from a small window on the side of an old brick building, soft, golden, alive. She peered inside and froze. The room was almost identical to the studio she had once dreamed of, only brighter. Inside, a young artist was painting by the window. The walls glowed with color, vibrant, unfinished, full of life. For a moment, Clara felt a sting of jealousy. That could have been me, she thought. But then something shifted. Watching the woman smile, lost in her art, Clara realized that what she envied wasn't the place, it was the freedom, the peace that came from being where you're meant to be. She stood there quietly, tears rising. It hit her all at once. She'd been so focused on the door that didn't open, she never noticed the windows life had left wide open for her. Maybe her dream wasn't meant to happen there because it was meant to happen through her, wherever she went next. As the sun touched her face through the glass, she smiled. It wasn't bitterness this time. It was gratitude. Gratitude for what didn't work out. Gratitude for every delay that had protected her from arriving too soon. She turned away from the window with peace she hadn't felt in years. If this moment touched your heart, take a second to like this video. Not for me, but as your quiet way of saying, I'm learning to trust life's timing too. Before she walked away, Clara did one last thing, something so symbolic it would change how she saw every closed door forever. Clara returned to the street one last time. The morning light painted the buildings in gold. The same street that once felt like her cage now felt like memory. She walked slowly, holding the old key in her hand, the same one that had carried her hope, her pain, her stubborn faith. But now it was only a symbol of who she used to be. She wasn't coming back to open the door. She was coming to thank it. She knelt by the frame, ran her fingers across the faded blue paint, and whispered, "Thank you for not opening." The wind moved softly through her hair, almost like a blessing. It was strange. For years she had begged this place for answers, and now it was her turn to give one. You were never a wall. You were a teacher. Then, with a steady breath, Clara placed the rusty key on the doorstep. No drama, no tears this time. Just peace. She stepped back and smiled, realizing that the door hadn't kept her out. It had kept her safe until she was ready for something greater. Across the street,
The window where she'd seen the young artist shone brighter than ever. As she walked away, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. She was walking into her own story now, one without locks, without waiting for permission to begin. The city felt wider, the air lighter, and for the first time in years, Clara laughed. Not because everything made sense, but because it finally didn't have to. Months passed. The city had changed, or maybe Clara had. The same streets that once carried the weight of disappointment now felt alive again. She'd rented a small corner space above a bakery, nothing fancy. Cracked walls, warm light, and the smell of bread rising through the floorboards. It wasn't the dream she'd pictured, but it was real. It was hers. Every morning she'd open the window wide, let the sunlight pour in, and paint. No deadlines, no fear of being too late, just color, motion, and peace. People walking by began stopping to watch. Some bought her paintings. Others just smiled and said, "Your art feels calm." And that, she thought, was the greatest compliment anyone could give her. One afternoon, Mia visited. She looked around the studio, her eyes wide. "Clara, this is beautiful. This is you." Clara smiled, wiping paint from her fingers. "Funny thing," she said. "The moment I stopped chasing the door that wouldn't open, life brought me straight to this one, and it didn't even need a key." They both laughed, their voices soft and full of peace. A few months later, Clara's work was displayed at a local gallery, not because she begged for it, but because someone had seen her painting in the bakery window and felt something. Her story spread quietly, not as a tale of success, but of surrender that bloomed into purpose. Her art no longer screamed, "Notice me." It whispered, "I'm finally free." And sometimes as she closed her studio at night, she'd look at the tiny rusty key framed on her wall, her reminder of grace disguised as delay. She'd smile and whisper to herself, "Thank you, life, for every door that didn't open. They led me right here." Sometimes the hardest part of life isn't walking through new doors. It's learning to walk away from the wrong ones with grace. We spend years forcing what was never meant to fit, thinking persistence is strength. But real strength is peace. Peace in trusting that what didn't open wasn't rejection. It was protection. Clara learned that. And so can you. Because every no you face, every silence you curse, might be life whispering, "Not this way. There's a gentler road waiting for you." And maybe, just maybe, that road begins the moment you stop fighting the one that's closed. When she finally stopped pushing, her story didn't end. It began. And the same miracle is waiting for you too. Sometimes the door that doesn't open is saving you from becoming someone you're not. Let go, trust the timing, and the path meant for you will find you effortlessly. If this story spoke to your heart, like this video. It tells YouTube to share it with someone else who's standing in front of their own locked door tonight. Subscribe for more stories that remind you you're not behind. You're being guided. And before you go, watch the video appearing on your screen. It's about what happens after you trust the silence and how peace opens doors effort never could. It might be exactly what your soul needs today.